Good morning. We'll get started in just a moment. Good morning. Just be a moment before we get started. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. The mural, actually this week's mural is from the new Google campus. So I visited that last Friday. I'll be talking about it. They have actually lots of amazing art. And I thought this crane was actually one of their very good murals that they had there. Let's go ahead and start. Good morning. I'm Sunnyvale Mayor Larry Klein. Thanks for joining me again this week. This is the 115th installment of my weekly virtual office hours. Happy Friday. Hope everyone's doing well. Welcome to the end of May, and congratulations to the Warriors for making it to the NBA Finals last night. I hope everyone enjoyed that game. If you're a basketball fan, it's always good to root for the Warriors. Let's go back and move to our normal background. There we go. And so we've now reached 302 days, more than 800 days now since the March 16, 2020 county health order started the shelter in place in an attempt to slow the spread of COVID-19. 2 years ago or more than 2 years ago, I converted my weekly office hours at a local coffee shop into this weekly live stream address. Haven't missed a week since. People still say they enjoy hearing from their mayor each week, whether or not they're watching this live or watching it time delayed sometime during the week. But it's good for me. It allows me to look back over the last few weeks and provide you some updates, some news, answer some of your questions, and just provide you some general words of encouragement. So thanks for allowing me to continue to represent you and work for Sunnyvale. Most Fridays like today, I'll also follow up these live stream sessions with in-person meetings. So if you want to meet with me at Bean Scene on Murphy Avenue, just email me and we can set up a 15-minute or 30-minute time slot so that we can talk about whatever your issue is, how you want to get involved in the city, or what do you have a great idea on what the city should be doing. So I always really enjoy those office hours, in-person office hours. I've been doing them now for coming up on 6 years, so more than 5.5 years now. Now let's go ahead and get started and talk about what's happened at the federal, state, county, and city level over the last 2 weeks. Last Tuesday, Governor Newsom was in Los Angeles at a water recycling facility, and Governor Newsom called on all the local water agencies and Californians to step up to take action to conserve water because of the drought. It's important because the drought conditions continue. We need to and he signed legislation to empower local water agencies to step up conservation measures across the state and ultimately encourage everyone to take aggressive action to meet those challenges head on. So Governor Newsom, in my opinion, has been a little slow to take any real action to combat the drought. There's been lots of, setting goals and encouraging. On May 13th, the State Water Resource Control Board finally approved draft regulations that will require all local water agencies to implement level 2 stage conditions as far as the water shortage contingency plans are concerned, and compel those that haven't developed plans to actually take the following steps: limit outdoor water use to 2 days a week, ban watering during the hottest parts of the days, ban irrigating ornamental grass if there are places that are doing that, and enforce fines of up to $500 a day for districts or corporations not in compliance. So the draft regulations were finally approved earlier this week, and this ultimately ensures that all local plans will be in fact by June 10th, and conceivably they'll be looking later to increase those, and the governor actually had a press conference earlier this week on that, or at least there was a press release on what the next steps as far as that is concerned. Last Tuesday, the Biden administration announced that it was opening up its free home test requests again for a third round of orders. So U.S. households now are able to order an additional 8 free at-home tests. So all you need to do is go to COVID tests, tests.gov, and you can put in your address there. And so this brings the total number of tests per address to 16. And I know that there are places around the county, certain drugstores, certain other county locations where you can actually pick up additional at-home tests if you want to go to the county itself in one of its many testing locations. Last Wednesday, the CDC updated its coronavirus guidance for domestic travel. It urged travelers to take a test close to departure, regardless of their vaccination status. So previously, it had said, if you're not vaccinated, please get tested. Now it's suggesting that anyone traveling within the United States should think about getting tested as close to the time of departure as possible, no more than 3 days ahead of the trip. And so, ultimately, this is regardless of your coronavirus vaccination status. So I think this was more of basically an umbrella for trying to cover anyone who is flying or doing any sort of transportation, whether or not it's by train or by plane within the U.S. And this is just basically, they also recommended that once you return, because conceivably if you've been involved in situations where you've been have a greater risk of exposure, crowded places and with conceivably not wearing a mask, they should also get a test after they return home from their destination. And then last Thursday, the CDC signed off on boosters for ages 5 through 11 for an additional dose, at least the Pfizer vaccine. If those 5 through 11 haven't been, it's been more than 5 months since their first primary series of vaccinations, basically the FDA emergency use authorization now applies to a booster dose for those in that range. And then last Thursday, Council it's only been a week, but we had our all-day budget workshop. It seems like many weeks ago now. So it started at 8:30 in the morning. It went to about 5:15 at night. It's our third of our all-day workshops that we have each year. And so the first one that we have in January is the strategic session. So we get an update on city operations and we kind of set the strategic priorities for the year. Our second one is our study issue and budget modification workshop. So that happens usually in March. And then the last one that we have in May is our budget workshop. And so the workshop is, critical because we do our final directions to staff for our next fiscal year budget. And so, Sunnyvale is pretty well renowned for its fiscal responsibility and budget policies. By our city charter, we need to have a 10-year balanced budget. And and we also from policy look at a 20-year plan. So we look at, well, for one thing, we look at when we're going to replace infrastructure, which is really important. But then we also look at any of the cost issues as we look at, the cost of projects and everything else over those 20 years, which I think is really good from a city standpoint to make sure that we are replacing the sewer lines. We are looking at repaving the roads, fixing sidewalks, all of that. We do have unfunded projects, but it's important that we actually take that bigger picture and make sure that we're not going to go bankrupt like some cities have done in the past, and we are looking at the financial repercussions of retirement issues and making sure that we aren't going to run out of money just because how we're paying our retired employees. So that's really important. Council approved several budget modifications that included adding several additional study issues that were already approved. So we reevaluate. So one of the things that we did was making sure that we're studying how to reevaluate traffic calming procedures. So looking at that process and whether or not those thresholds are the right thresholds and what our kind of steps are as far as that's concerned. We're going to be doing a comprehensive update on the feasibility of recycled water expansion. So making sure that whatever we're doing, it's like, can we use recycled water? We're in the drought. And so any water that comes out of our smart station or out of our wastewater treatment plant, are there other places within the city that we can actually utilize that? We're also doing a study for universal basic income pilot program. So there's a certain number of federal and conceivably state funding that would help, give $500 or $1,000 to residents that are most in need and help them, basically help lift them up and lift themselves up. And so I think that is, a good way to spend our city's money to study that and see what grants are available and how we can set that up. And then we also set up $200,000 for the cricket batting cages. So that was a study that was finished last year. And here we're basically saying, working with residents to raise some funds, and so that we can start putting cricket batting cages into some of our parks. And then last Friday, I had the pleasure to attend the ribbon cutting of Google's Bayview campus next to Moffett Field. And so this has been, I think, almost 10 years in design, but it was really a truly amazing campus. So it has the dragon scale solar panels on the roof, and even how the roof was put up was kind of amazing. So it was ratcheted up; it wasn't built in place. So a lot of people were saying, "Oh, it's just like the one on Shoreline." So there's a Google campus on Shoreline, but that was a fixed campus. The Bayview one, the roof actually was ratcheted up. And so it has those solar panels. It has, I think, about 90,000 solar panels producing, I think, 7 megawatts of power. But it also has water is retained on the campus, so it's recycled. It has a geothermal pile system, so for cooling and heating. So it basically recirculates the air into the ground, and so there's a whole process from that standpoint of cooling down or heating up the air based upon using the geothermal pipes that go through the ground. So lots of innovative technology and lots of fantastic art, much like the mural that I showed at the beginning. So it's really impressive, and that for that grand opening, Google was also donating $150,000 to Mountain View's CSA, their service organization, as well as Sunnyvale's $150,000 to Sunnyvale Community Services. So great event, and good to see that they're giving back to the community, which is really important. Last weekend was Bike to Wherever weekend. It is Bike Month, and there were Energizer stations around South Bay. At the Sunnyvale Farmers Market, at the library on Sunday. So lots of different locations here in Sunnyvale as well as around the South Bay. You know, I'm a big bike enthusiast and was out on my bike last weekend. So it was beautiful weather as far as being out on the bike. There's actually a bike bash at the Sunnyvale Sports Basement. I don't know if people have gone to that, but there's a bike bash at the Sunnyvale Sports Basement on Kern Avenue near Lawrence later tonight. So hopefully people were able to attend that. And then as far as this week is concerned, on Monday, Governor Newsom threatened to impose mandatory water restrictions if residents don't use less water on their own. You know, this drought continues to drag on, and especially as the hotter summer months approach, Newsom, you know, raised the possibility of those mandatory restrictions in a meeting with representatives with the major water agencies on Monday. And that included, you know, representatives from Los Angeles, San Diego, San Francisco Bay Area. You know, the governor has continued to avoid sweeping mandatory cuts in water use, instead favored, you know, basically pushing the local water agencies to set the rules for water use in cities and towns. So he will meet again with the water agencies again in 2 months. We'll see if he finally does mandatory restrictions, just like Governor Brown did back in 2015 or so. On Tuesday, Valley Water took their action and adopted a program to enforce restrictions on outdoor water use. So lots of things happening about water this week. This new program includes fines for those who ignore repeated notices to correct a violation, and you know, it complements the existing enforcement programs that Valley Water is already doing. You know, so that program goes into effect June 1st and enforces the restrictions to encourage, you know, people to report for people to report if there are instances of water waste within the county. So, and that includes if you see watering ornamental lawns more than 2 days a week. And so that's, you know, any lawn that, and that's by potable water, and hopefully that's being posted. So if you see business parks or you know, any outside landscape that isn't like a park or actual turf. So if you see anyone in a residence that watering more than 2 days a week, watering any outdoor landscape between 9 a.m. and 6 p.m. So you know, for the 2 days that you are watering, it should be before or after sunrise, sunset, pretty much. Any outdoor watering that results in excessive runoff onto adjacent properties, you know, so if you see a lot of runoff, and then watering outdoors within 48 hours of a storm, we won't have to deal with that until next rainy season, most likely, but that's also part of those restrictions. And then on Tuesday, Tuesday evening, council met, and we started with a study session on the potential closure of the 100 block of Murphy Avenue. And so, you know, we got our staff report. There's been a lot of outreach up to this point. You know, it was good that 92% of the residents and businesses that responded were in favor of banning cars permanently on South Murphy Avenue. And there was a smaller percentage that said do it, you know, on a seasonal basis, and some said not at all. But in general, it was good to hear back from and kind of get the results from the outreach that's happened with the business community, with the residents. In general, it was really positive. You know, council also was in favor of closing Murphy Avenue. You know, there are, of course, the devil is in the details. There are issues on how to make it ADA compliant and who will pay for that infrastructure, as well as the long-term maintenance. You know, it's like previously, you know, the cafes could use their sidewalks, and so it was a one-time fee of $214, but the ongoing maintenance of those and cleaning of those sidewalks wasn't was done by the city, and the same thing with the streets as we're moving forward. There's an equity issue raised by some businesses outside of those on Murphy Avenue that we can't set up on our streets or our sidewalks, and we have to maintain that ourselves. And so there are questions about that. So that, I think the devil's that detail of what we're going to do from an ADA compliance standpoint, who pays for that. The estimate was about $120,000 to deal with the curbs. So basically along all those areas mainly where the parking used to be, how we take basically the curbs and make it a gentle slope so it's ADA compliant. And then of course, that long-term maintenance. But in general, everybody was very positive of making sure that downtown Murphy Avenue is actually closed permanently. And then as far as the main meeting, council adopted a resolution to extend our declaration of the stage 2 water shortage emergency and continue to implement that 15% water reduction target. And so we then set a maximum 2-day per week irrigation schedule, declaring that when we declared that stage 2 water shortage, and we extend that 15% water reduction target through June 30th of 2023. So basically another year, but ultimately that will limit the schedule of irrigation to 2 days a week. And so that depends upon what your address is. So if you're a property, whether or not it's residential or business, if you have a property with an odd number, an address that ends in 13579, or no address at all, you can irrigate on Monday or Thursday. And then if you have an even address, so if you have an even address ending in 02468, you basically can irrigate only on Tuesday and Friday. And so that, that's basically to make it very clear of who's irrigating in certain days of the week, basically any days but Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. Any other day, irrigation is basically not allowed. So it's also, when on days that people can irrigate, it prohibits irrigating between 9 a.m. and 6 p.m. So it's continuing that to make sure that people are trying to conserve water. If there's lots of evaporation in the mid part of the day. So, if you're going to irrigate as early as possible. Let's go ahead and get to our weekly COVID numbers. The COVID numbers across the nation continue trending upward. From a national standpoint, we've now reached 83.5 million cases. That's increased by about another 800,000 just in the last week. And of course, those are official numbers. Conceivably, lots of people have home tested and have tested positive and aren't reporting that. We have, 258 million vaccinated with at least one dose. That's 83% of those 5 and older with at least one dose, and 76% of adults are fully vaccinated. As far as deaths, the CDC has finally listed that the US has passed 1 million deaths of people with COVID. That's about an additional 2,000 in the last week. And so, we have lots of, over the last 2 weeks, we've had lots of people saying we've passed 1 million deaths. The CDC now finally has that official number. So it's amazing to see that continues to go up, people passing away with COVID. And then from a California standpoint, we've had about 8.8 million positive cases at this point, and we continue to see that increase, that rapid increase in the state. We're now almost to 11,000 new cases a day. That's up from just 8,400 a week ago, 6,200 a week before that, 4,800 a week before that. We're now at a 6.6 test case positivity. Average for the last 8 weeks. That means that it's rapidly gone up higher than 6%, on a week-by-week basis to get that 8-week average. So COVID is, these latest strains of COVID are here, and I hear from a lot of different people. I think I think the mayor of San Jose got infected this week, but you're hearing a lot from a lot of different people that they're have been affected with COVID. California has now had over 90,000 fatalities, 990,488. And then from a county standpoint, we've had a cumulative case count of 341,000, up about 7,500 since last week. That's up from 6,000 a week before and 4,000 a week before that. So, people are still being infected. We had 2 additional deaths in the last week. So we now reached 2,283 deaths. Luckily, from a county standpoint, 94.7% of those 18 and over are fully vaccinated, and more than 70% of those that are eligible for the booster have already received it. I continue to spend lots of time advocating on our city's behalf at the county level, talking to our supervisors, talking to county health. Ultimately, from testing, county is still doing testing at the Sunnyvale Community Center on the 1st and 3rd Thursdays of the month. And all you need to do is go to sccfreetest.org, and you can sign up for your appointment starting 7 days before that, and seeing all the different locations around the county where you can get tested. And then if you still need to get vaccinated or boosted, I know that several boosting stations were about to close down, but of course, once they opened it up to those 5 through 11, they continued being open. But you can go to sccfreevax.org to find out all those locations where you can get your shot or your booster. Next, I wanted to announce some of the upcoming events. So June start next week, which is of course Pride Month, and there are several celebrations here in Sunnyvale. So on next Wednesday, June 1st at 8 a.m. at the City Hall, the city will be raising the Pride flag in recognition of Pride Month. And so the flag will fly for the remainder of June, of course. And, council authorized that action back on June 11th, 2019 to raise the Pride flag on a yearly basis. And then to celebrate the LGBTQ community, Sunnyvale, the city of Sunnyvale, along with the Sunnyvale Downtown Association and Sunnyvale Chamber of Commerce, will have a Pride celebration on Murphy Avenue on Thursday, June 23rd at 5 p.m. And so that celebration will include, some brief remarks, some swag, some entertainment, have basically an art feature organized by the Sunnyvale Art Club. So hopefully everyone can come to downtown Murphy Avenue and enjoy that celebration. And then, of course, next weekend, June 4th and 5th, the Chamber brings back the Sunnyvale Art and Wine Festival. So as opposed to the mini event that we had last October, this is a little bit closer to the way things were pre-COVID. There'll be over 200 artists and vendors, and lots of other things. There'll be live music both days, all day performances on 2 different stages. There will be wine, beer, and margarita booths. Of course, they're still focusing on dining on Murphy Avenue. There will be a few food trucks. There'll be a children's activity area, as well as business exhibits. So definitely come downtown, enjoy all the fun Saturday and Sunday. I think it's 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. both days. So come enjoying the fun. It'll be good to see everyone, and hope everything goes smoothly as far as that's concerned. The weather looks like it's going to be good. Earlier this week was very hot. Next weekend is supposed to be a little bit cooler. And then as far as upcoming council meetings, our next council meeting is on June 7th, and we'll be looking at approving the final budget modifications. We'll receive a budget modification for a $1 million grant from Silicon Valley Clean Energy for solar panels and battery storage at our new city hall. So the new city hall is under construction and moving along quickly. But we do have to approve, any large grants from a city standpoint. And then we will also be looking at approving our final budget for fiscal year 22-23, as well as the fees the city charges for our next fiscal year. So that'll be that June 7th meeting. Let's go ahead and get to our weekly questions. If you have a question, please add them to the chat. First, Jeff asked, we are getting close to election day. Do you have any suggestions on the ballot measures? So we're only a week and about a week and a half away from election day. So everyone should have received their ballot. Hopefully you've gotten that and are looking at returning it. As far as our ballot measure is concerned, yes, I do have an opinion on both of those. First, on Measure A, please vote no. So that, the Measure A basically changes the term limits for our 5 Santa Clara Valley Water Board District Board members. And the terminology that the ballot measure is, I'll say, is a little disingenuous. So if I remember the terminology, it basically says it amends an ordinance for the board members to limit board members to 4 successive terms. And, that limit board members to 4 successive terms is, I think, is bad phrasing. And, I wasn't happy that was the way that ballot measure went. They're currently limited to 3 terms. It was back in, I think, 2010 that residents in the county passed basically a measure that limited them to 3 terms. And that passed with, I think, 75% of the vote. And so here we are, 12 years later, and what they basically want to do is increase from 3 terms to 4 terms, and saying that it is a limit, change the ordinance to limit them to 4 successive terms. Basically says, oh, we really want to increase, not limit. And so that terminology, I think, of course, polled very well. It's like, oh yeah, I'd be happy to limit them to 4 terms. We're actually increasing their term limits from 3 4-year terms to 4 4-year terms. So I would definitely, propose voting no on Measure A. And then for Measure G, please vote yes. That's the $275 million school board bond for Fremont Union High School District. Basically, Measure G allows the Fremont Union High School districts to continue renovations and modernization of all the different high schools in the district. Most of the schools were built about 50 years ago, and this continues that modernization of classrooms, improving heating, ventilation, air conditioning, LED lighting replacement, as well as alarms, fire alarms, sprinklers, technology refresh, and everything else. So I think I think that is a measure that's good for our students, good for our high schools. The average cost of property owners would be about $16 per $100,000 of assessed value. That's not market value. So, and because of Prop 13, that assessed value goes up relatively small every year, but to me, I think it's a great investment in our students and in our high schools. We have great high schools here, and I think it's making sure that we continue to do those renovations, which are really important. They're all of the oversight of the Fremont Union High School District's bonds in the past have been very good, and I saw some of those renovations that finished earlier this year. As far as, and other questions, Joni asks, where do I report, or how do I report it if I see water waste? So the Valley Water actually has wastewater or water waste inspectors that respond to reports for water waste violations in the local area. So there's multiple ways to report that. One of which is there's a Valley Water app. So if you want to, if you're very useful with your phone, you can just download that on your phone, and it's very easy to report that. You can go to their website. So if you go to Access Valley Water website, there's a place to look at. You click on Conserve Water and Save. And or search for wastewater to report. You can call Valley Water directly, 408-630-2000, to report any waste that you see, or you can email waterwise, W-I-S-E, at valleywater.org to report, any water waste that you see. Next, Erica asks, I've been seeing some utility boxes beautifully painted and have always wanted to paint one. I'm not a muralist, but I'm more of an abstract painter. How do I join the program and be able to paint a utility box for the city? Thank you and have a wonderful day. So the first set of 12 utility boxes for our great box cover up, we had an application process where artists who submitted proposals, and actually at least one of them was abstract art. I think the one on Iowa and Matilda is abstract art, but we look forward to the next steps in our art master plan implementation. We're talking about group projects for other utility box art painting in the future. There's no date yet, but what you can do is you can go to the city website and search for our art master plan. And you can sign up to keep up to date on future art projects, and then you can safely join those or propose. There's always a call for artists as far as that's concerned. Alan asked, I'm looking for information about the Washington Park pool since we live right next to it, but it always seems like it's closed or has limited hours. Do you know if the pool policy, what the pool public policy is and why the hours are so limited? It seems with COVID, it would be great outdoor activity for kids. And I feel this amazing resource is being underutilized. So yes, definitely, we are opening it up more in the summertime like we always do. So it's been open for lap swim multiple days out of the week. It's all you need to do is go to the city website and search for pool, and you can see our swim center, and you can see how you reserve for lap swim at several different pools that the city runs. But for recreation hours, we'll start having recreation hours in June. And that will be June 13th through August 12th. And that'll be, I think, 3 hours of the day. So you'll still have lap reservations for lap swimming. And then you'll have those recreation hours where kids can go mainly in the hottest parts of the day. So I think it's from 2 to 5 p.m. on weekdays and 12:30 to 3:30 p.m. on Saturday and Sunday. And we're looking at conceivably expanding those hours, but that's what those hours are now. It's hiring those additional staff. Those summertime staff has been very difficult, I'll say the least. In making sure that our summer programs, our different camps, as well as running our pools, have enough staff and lifeguards to operate normally. Danny asked, my kids loved Hands on the Arts and the Cultural Festival. However, we hated the goose poop that was all around the community center site. Is there something that could be done? Yes. So currently there's a survey to get public feedback on 3 options for our community center project. So ultimately they're looking at redoing the grounds where the pools are and several other areas around the community grounds, around the senior center and community center. And there's 3 different options, one of which is kind of so reduce the pool slightly, the big pond that's there right by Remington, basically make a kind of a center crossing and kind of split into 2 large pools. There's also reduce it down to basically half that size, so only one of the pools, and then basically remove the lower pond completely and only keep the upper fountain. All the different solutions or proposals talk about keeping the upper fountain So there's an online survey right now, and that's open until June 17th. I posted about that, I think, last week, but you have a few weeks left. You can go through my social media and find that link, or you can go to the city website and search for community center master plan. And then Kimberly asked, I was wondering if Sunnyvale has considered having a park or parks designated with unleashed grassy dog areas. There are several in Mountain View and in Cupertino. These are not fenced dog parks, but open grassy areas for unleashed play. It might help with all those people complaining about unleashed dogs. Just an idea, thanks. Yes, we do. We actually have a study issue that keeps falling just below the line to get funded. And so we'll hopefully get it funded next year. I would love to see, a pilot program started in the city because, we have, I think, a lot of want for people to have off-leash hours at certain parks, so they wouldn't be breaking the city law. And so making sure that we actually have that as a part of the city. And we are looking at adding dog parks at each of the city parks, as we, at Fair Oaks Park, we added one. At the upcoming park where the old AMD campus is, there'll be a dog park there also. And finally, John asked previously, what is happening with the big hole where Macy's used to be? So the digging for the 2 levels of underground parking is pretty much complete at this point. They're starting to pour the cement for the garage. And then ultimately construction for the retail, the residential, and the office will begin in the fall. And that should finish sometime in 2024. Let's see if I have any other questions. Mayor, do you know about the accident that occurred about 12 a.m. on 237 at Lafayette and Matilda? 237 Lafayette and Matilda. No, I don't. So I'll see if I can find out any information on that. I'm in the process of landscaping, and I wanted to change my landscape to native drought resistant landscape. Yes, if you're in the process of getting rid of your lawn, the Valley Water actually has multiple rebates available. So definitely that's something to consider. So if you go to actually the app has something, but if you go to their website, take a look on Valley Water on lots of money that they have to basically replace wherever you can, replacing your lawn with drought resistant landscape. Getting rid of lawns, I think, is one of the best things people can do. We did that. We got rid of our lawn, although it was basically just dead grass for years, and finally said, you know what, we need to get rid of that completely and replace it with native plants. And especially what you can do to attract butterflies and attract bees, so basically make it native as well as make it insect, make it very positive for insects and for, I think there's definitely the hummingbirds love several of our flowers that we have there. So it's actually great as far as that's concerned. Shane asked, wondering if you're endorsing anybody or can make any recommendations for people to consider for the upcoming election. So the biggest, so I have several people I've endorsed. I think for at least for Sunnyvale, I'll just talk about those endorsements. I've endorsed for the June election. I've endorsed Evan Lowe for our assembly district. We redid did a lot of redistricting this year, and from a district standpoint, there's a brand new assembly district that didn't have an incumbent, and so Evan Lowe, who basically was part of a different assembly district. When we were added to this new assembly district, it removed Campbell from his district. So he ended up moving to Sunnyvale, where actually his father lives, and he actually spent a lot of time here for years. So he knows Sunnyvale very well. He had Cupertino before in Santa Clara. So I think he's the best from an assembly district. And then we also have a new state senator district. It used to be Bob Wykowski's district. So at the end of this year, Assemblymember Berman and Assemblymember Becker will no longer represent Sunnyvale. So we've been moved out of their district. They are running for their districts, but Sunnyvale, but they will no longer represent Sunnyvale at the end of this year. But I'm endorsing Evan Lowe for Assembly. And then as far as our new Senate district, which was Bob Wykowski's district, there's two good candidates. Aisha Wahab, who is a council member up in Hayward. So the new district goes from Hayward down to Sunnyvale. And then also Lily May, who's mayor of Fremont. And I've worked with Lily for years now, especially during COVID. And, Fremont is very similar to Sunnyvale. It's the second biggest city in their county. So, in Alameda County, all the focus is on Oakland. In Santa Clara County, pretty much all the focus is on San Jose. But I endorsed Lily long before we knew that redistricting would happen, and we're part of her state Senate district. I think both are good candidates, but yeah, I definitely endorsed Lily for that district, or for a state Senate long before that district was changed. So that's the two that affect us. Of course, there's governor and lots of state offices that don't directly represent us. They represent us, but more at the state level. So Governor Newsom, and all the different Attorney General, and from that standpoint, lots of representation. But those are the ones I think ultimately politics is very, very local. And to me, it's our state assembly member and state senator are on the ground directly here and making a difference. So I do think that's critical at the end of the day, of making sure that we have good people representing us. I don't see any other questions, or at least Google is giving me issues as far as seeing what additional comments actually might be there. Actually, let me see if I do have anything else. Oh, yes, from Raghu. Yeah, landscaping, doing drought tolerant landscaping, absolutely. So, doing drip irrigation, doing drought tolerant landscaping is critical. And then, of course, what Pat said, I'll find out if I can find any information about what the accident was on about midnight on 237. So let me see what I can find out as far as that's concerned. Let's go ahead and wrap up. Thanks for joining me again this week. We're still living uncertain times with stress and concern. COVID continues to affect a lot of people, but I want you to know that no matter what our challenges and whatever we face those challenges together. I'm proud of our city and how our residents have responded to COVID and, all the different challenges over the last few years. But I'm thankful to everyone who helps out in our community, who shows their generosity and their empathy for their neighbors. New issues always come up, but your actions and your attitude really do make a difference. Sunnyvale will emerge from this as a stronger community. We're in this together, and we will get through this together. Thanks for listening. Have a great Memorial Day weekend and a wonderful week next week. Goodbye.